Hello, I'm Chris Curry. Welcome to the Temple Grandin Eustacia Cutler Autism Fund webinar series. Today, Eustacia Cutler will be talking to Dr. Don McMahon from Washington State University about the research he is doing with assistive technology in individuals with disabilities. He'll be telling us about his work with augmented reality and the possibility it offers to people with autism. Eustacia Cutler, who is Temple Grandin's mother, is also the author of A Thorn in My Pocket, a tributing guide to all mothers who have a child with autism. And now it gives me great pleasure to turn this webinar conversation over to Eustacia to introduce Dr. Don McMahon.
What an honor and pleasure, Don, to introduce you. You have a resume so long, I have to read it. You are an assistant professor of special education technology at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. Your research focus on universal design for learning, assistive technology, augmented reality, virtual reality, wearable devices, mobile learning, and instructional technology. Wow. At WSU, Don McMahon is Director of Assisted Technology Research and Development Lab and an affiliate member of the Neurocognitive Science Lab. This is all, I'm fascinated because this is an area I don't know, so I'm going to let you tell me about it. All I know is that you have a splendid degree from Harvard, from
from the University of Tennessee. I just got
to go. It says here the Harvard Graduate School of Education.
I went to a summer institute there on Universal Design for Learning. I can only afford a week, so.
Okay. Well, if you want to qualify it, I was going to do the whole majestic sweep of it. But what interests me so much is your particular interest in special education and those children, and co-teaching and coaching in general education, bringing these two classifications of children together. I know so little about this. I want to turn it over to you, but because I don't even know what questions to ask you yet. So you fill us in.
Yeah, I'm glad to help. So again, when I was a teacher in Knoxville, I was a special education teacher there. Like some special education teachers, I did not initially plan on becoming a special education teacher. I, during my undergrad, had ignored my mother and not listened to her instructions that I was supposed to become a teacher, and gotten a degree in history and English and film production. After a little while, I realized, after I was working in the summer camp world in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and I enjoyed working and teaching with kids a lot, and I realized my mom was in fact correct and I was supposed to become a teacher. And I moved to Knoxville and started looking for options to get into teaching, and there was a dire need for special education teachers. So with about 16 hours of total training, I became a special education teacher in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I luckily had the most supportive group of teachers and an incredible principal, Dr. Loy, there, who was really kind of forward-thinking and kind of taught me a lot about behaviorism. And from there, I picked up my master's in special education and worked for 7 years there at an alternative school for students with disabilities and some pretty significant behavior challenges in Knoxville. Many of my students had either autism or intellectual disabilities or a wide range of disabilities. But one of the things I really discovered in my teaching was technology was a really powerful engagement tool for my learners. And while someone might argue with a teacher or a paraprofessional working with them, no one ever seemed to get into too many verbal arguments or get that mad at a device that they were working with or a piece of software. And so when there were hiccups, we would work through them together, and started to really have an interest in ways that I could use technology to help students with disabilities.
Well, two things occur to me as you say that. first of all, the wonderful thing about the mathematical world is there are answers. And it's not like studying English literature where you're left in the shadowy world of who we are as individuals. But you speak, what I'd like you to do, though, is to tell me a story, first of all, about struggling with a child or a young person, I don't know which would be, who was trying to grasp the technology. Where were the stumbling blocks? What troubled the boy you're going to tell us about?
Okay. I think, one of the things I generally liked about the technology, it's a lot easier for me to think of times where technology started to reduce barriers than where it started to cause them necessarily. One of the ones that comes to mind initially where just working on basic sight words and doing them on paper frequently would be a little bit of a conflict-inducing activity sometimes for some of my students. They would get frustrated or when it was just not that engaging, and there was a lot of frustration and frequently a tendency to give up. And it's just simple things like using interactive whiteboards so there was some movement and having students go up to the board.
What is an interactive
whiteboard? So it's basically a projected screen. So
yes.
Like I take my computer screen and project it on a wall, and my students, just like they can use a touch screen with a iPad and they can just touch, except it's a big interactive thing that you can go up to. And so if I was saying, I need you to touch, pick the word cat, or let's make a sentence. The cat ran down the hill. My students could, instead of trying to struggle through it on paper, which may or may not be that engaging for some of them, I always seem to have a much higher degree of initial success with some of my students when they were able to stand up, go up to the board, and interact with it and assemble that sentence, the cat ran up the hill. And that was one of the biggest pieces of technology I had in my classroom at the time. It was before iPads came out and a lot of the tools that we have now. So the interactive whiteboard and teaching other teachers how to use the interactive whiteboard kind of started my progression into helping other teachers use technology. And there was right around that same time, there was a whole explosion of different computer apps that were available out there. You could just go out to the internet and go on to starfall.com or Glogster, and several of these that are out there that are still out there, and teachers are still using them. And when these things were brand new, I kind of got interested in keeping up with them and figuring out
what was the date? When would you date that work came in? When you said they were new?
About
like
2005 to 2008, there was a nice explosion of interactive apps for education. That lots of educators called it Web 2.0. So that was kind of the same time where I think we all got Time Magazine's Person of the Year in 2006 with the little Time Magazine that said, "You," because of all the things that we've made. And I have mine framed. I don't know if everyone else really took it as personally as I did, but I really was excited to be Time Magazine's Person of the Year in 2002 or 2006 with everyone else. So.
Well, what about the children who are half grown? What you're bringing up is the difficulty of the connection of different disciplines. Children who had already started with paper because that's all there was. Yeah. Suddenly you're bringing them into another world. See, some of the children you're working with today have known nothing but your world.
True.
What about those that were sliding between the two worlds?
So at the University of Tennessee, I was lucky enough to work in a post-secondary education program for students with disabilities. Some of them had intellectual disabilities, some of them had autism, and there I found, while these students probably had less exposure to technology than some others, like a 6-year-old today, they still were adopting and wanted to use technology pretty readily. I think from the explosion of smartphones that are out there, that's one of the things that we've seen be really motivating for a lot of my students that are
When
kind of in that transition age.
that came in the first decade of the 21st century?
Yeah, so smartphones started really taking off, I guess, about 2008, 2009. And so I guess we're only about 6 years into the iPhone now, if I remember right. And all of my, students who were in their 20s and a couple students that were in their 30s, were still really motivated into figuring out, how to use their phone to communicate and message, even though sometimes things like typing or spelling might be difficult. One of the things that we found was using social networks was really motivating for a lot of my students because, all of their friends were using social networks, and even though they might not be a great speller and some of them were not very diligent about their own writing, let's say for assignments in my class, but were started to become very diligent about their social networking posts.
Other people's spelling.
Because they didn't want their friends to go, "We don't understand what you meant." Unfortunately, my writing assignments were not they didn't receive that same level of diligence. But it was interesting because over 2 years of working with these transition age students at the Future program at the University of Tennessee, the amount of growth that I saw in just something as simple as a daily Facebook post responding to a question for my class was just incredible. For some of my students, it was initially almost kind of a word soup of misspelling, and you're really trying to struggle and figure out exactly what they were trying to communicate. And by the end, you're having these posts that would have 2 to 3 like complex thoughts in them, and they're making some good connections. And I mean, there's still some errors, but there's still some errors in my Facebook post too. So I think it's, they were really able to engage and communicate with peers. So that was one of the, I think, great things I've seen happen recently.
What springs to mind hearing you talk are 2 things. First of all, the wonderful gift of curiosity. And if all people, it's not just children, if you're curious about something, you'll work much harder to find out the answer, or at least get a trail on what you're after. We started out by wanting to hear you talk about the Pokemon game. And there's an article that came out in the New York Times this morning. So I've got it here, and I began to read it and thought, this is wonderful. It really is a virtual variety of the old scavenger game. And I read this and I thought, I would have loved this as a child because we loved scavenger hunts. But I need to have you illustrate it for me a little more clearly. And then I'd like to know how this particularly helps children on the autism spectrum.
I'm glad to do it. And
so I want to interrupt with a question here because I talked to Temple about doing this, Eustacia, this particular webinar. And she wanted to know what the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality was, because so many kids, she said, get lost in the virtual reality, and that's not a good thing for people with autism. So she wanted to, and I was kind of hoping we could start there. And I know, Don, you have your own
that's
slides.
A good idea.
So
Yes, start there.
if you want to switch over to yours, we'll let you go, okay?
Well,
all right.
Okay, yes, you carry on from here.
Thank you.
Well, I think I can tackle both points pretty well. So I guess, are you sharing my screen right now, if that's possible? So
yes, I've got, I can't read your screen.
Okay.
I can see that it's there.
Is that helpful?
No, I can't work from it. It's just the words are too blurred to read.
So what if I'll just make this really simple and.
Are you going to bring up anything on the?
Yeah, I was going to bring up some slides on here. Okay. Can you? Well, we had it just like sometimes when I do trainings with teachers about technology. Sometimes it doesn't work in class and you come up with a plan B. So this will be our plan B. Can you see my screen behind me now? Is that better?
Yes, it's blank at the moment. Yeah.
Can you see me pointing to anything?
I can see see you pointing,
Yes.
but I can't read what you're pointing at.
I'll help with that part. So this is, just to help out real quick, this is something called the mixed reality or mediated reality continuum. Over here we have real life. We are in real life right now, and just walking down the street. AR is right here where we get just a little bit of digital information overlaid on top of the real world, like Pokemon Go. And then over here on the right is something called virtual reality, where I put on a set of goggles and I'm in a completely artificial environment that's completely computer generated. So that is kind of the quick example of how virtual reality and augmented reality are different. I like augmented reality because this is something that we kind of have seen in different types of technology for years, and it's been hinted at in movies, or at one point it was only available in like military applications or large industrial ones. Anybody ever see Top Gun back in the 80s and they were in a fighter jet and there was that little target that said, "Hey, I'm now the host. Can you still see me?"
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, but I don't see the target. Oh.
All right. Okay, but
Chris, you're there together. Yep. So let you take over here because you can see the screen, and there's no point my saying I can't see it.
Oh, that's okay.
So I'll turn the two of you over to each other.
But AR is just that little piece of digital information overlaid on top of the real world. One of the things that's so motivating for young students or adults who are playing Pokemon Go is they go out into a park or down their street and they find, let's say, a Horsia or one of the other little Pokemon that are out there. And they click on it and then they can see it right there in their neighborhood, in their world, in their front yard is Pikachu or some other type of Pokemon that are out there. And that's pretty exciting because I'm looking through, let's say, my iPad's camera and I'm seeing how right there is this cool little creature to get. And that, just like what you were talking about, it being a scavenger hunt, it's a scavenger hunt with a high degree of relevance because that's my park that I go to, or that's right down the street from my school. And there's so many great stories out there that I've been reading from members of the autism community who are, parents telling stories. My child wasn't excited about leaving the house. It hasn't been excited for a couple of years, but we just went to the park and made 3 friends who were also all looking for something bizarre that I don't understand what it was and can't pronounce, but I don't care because this is exciting. And I've seen it with my daughter, Sydney Reese. She's 4 and she doesn't have a disability, but she's incredibly shy. But when we take her and she runs around with my phone at the park, she's coming up to people and go, "Did you see it? Did you see it?" And that's kind of exciting to see because this is, she usually attempts to hide behind me and run into me and, squunch up behind me every time someone new comes around. So I think just because of that social aspect of AR, especially with Pokemon Go, of going out and looking for things in the community, that's been really, really powerful so far. Well, one of the things that's going to happen here in the next 5 years is that augmented reality and virtual reality and wearable devices are going to probably keep growing, and they're expected to become a $150 billion market, kind of rivaling the impact of mobile phones. And if you think about how much smartphones and iPads and Android tablets have changed things for students in the last year, just for students with, let's say, students with autism and all of the communication apps that are out there. A Dynavox used to cost $8,000 to be a communication device, and now you can get mobile apps that'll do it for a few $100s. So it's had a huge impact for people with disabilities, and I think this next round of growth with augmented reality will have kind of a similar impact for progress. So this is an example of how I used augmented reality to help a group of students with autism in a post-secondary education program. They were trying to learn science vocabulary words that were pretty challenging, like phalanges. And they look at that little marker, and when they look at that object in augmented reality, we've created science vocabulary words that provide their own definitions. We just matched up a little video. Here they're learning the word aorta, so it provides them a definition, the movie reads the definition aloud, and then shows a little picture showing where an aorta is. And at the end of this, it was incredibly successful. My students learned all of these pretty difficult science vocabulary words and were able to both label them correctly and provide the correct definition. So we kind of tested in two separate ways whether if they were able to master it.
What age are they at when they're learning that?
This is in the post-secondary education program, so they were between 18 and I think our oldest was 31.
Uh-huh.
So
they were pretty adult.
They were, but
so they were able to think.
Good luck also working with younger students with this exact same application, completing other activities like chain task, functional skills on, completing all the steps of how to use and go through the process of brushing your teeth is one that we've just gotten out there. So that's kind of exciting, I think, as well, because we have lots of evidence that providing video models helps students with autism engage in new academic and functional life skills, because it's really good at providing those type of prompts right through a chain task.
So Don, I just want to interrupt you for a second. At this point, you're located in Pullman, Washington, but you are looking for young people to use in a study. Is that something, or should I not say that?
No, we absolutely are. One of the things that we're doing here at Washington State University is we've set up an assistive technology research and development lab to really explore how to use augmented reality and to some extent virtual reality, but really focused on AR probably for the next year in ways that'll help students, because this technology is going to become a lot more common in the next couple of years. I've been looking at AR research for students with autism for about 4 years now, and the amount of interest that Pokemon Go has generated is kind of mind-blowing at this point, and really exciting, I think. So I'm excited that there's so much interest in it right now. So what's great about this particular app, though, is I made this picture of a vacuole match up to that little card vacuole all by myself. That's something that parents and teachers can start doing right now. This is a free app called Erasmo, and you just match up a picture, like that little marker there, with either a picture or a video that the students or teachers record. One of my favorite things to do with it is to have the students make their own and have teachers create interactive word walls where all of these words are on a wall, and then you have all of these students running around the classroom saying, oh, I want to see what this one does, and I want to see what this one does. And that's
because I think for autism, they're very visually related. This is why language throws them off. Language, until it's written down, isn't visual. It's just thoughts we're exchanging that are existing only in the air. And I think that confuses a lot of children on the autism spectrum. Whereas now you're giving them something absolutely concrete. So then the word becomes real to them.
Absolutely. And just like we do with flashcards to create paired association, here's the word cat, here's a picture of a cat. Now I can make this augmented reality cat pop up beside a cat, which is pretty motivating. So
very helpful.
And I think, and while, here's a little picture of the card that I made, and then this is the word list that they used.
Yes.
And then I imagine that most of our audience today doesn't really care about graphs and data, but just for the record, it worked for all of our students. And
well, I think they care about whether or not it works, and they want.
I think that's probably a lot more motivating.
It's also proof that your work is serious work. It's not just frivolous. It's not just cartoon watching.
Yes, I think that's one of the.
They need I believe firmly in statistics. We need them as proof of what's going on, the existence.
And one of the things that we're always encouraged to do in special education is use evidence-based practices. So one of the things I've been kind of laboring at in the background for a while now is trying to build an evidence base on augmented reality with my work and the work of some researchers and around the country and around the world.
When you say researchers, who else is researching, and how do you connect with other research disciplines?
Well, here at WSU, I'm lucky because I have good access to our computer science department, so I'm able to meet with them and work on some different lines of research. Like here, in augmented reality, we're looking at some navigation supports for students with disabilities, a series of studies on working on functional skills, and things like the vocabulary study that you saw a video of just a second ago. I work with Dr. David Chiak, who is my mentor out of the University of Tennessee, and Rachel Wright, who just took a job working with an organization in Wisconsin that is a private school for students with autism. I believe it's called Common Threads. And then Zachary Walker at the University of Singapore has a nice line of augmented reality research out there as well. And then there are a lot of people who are interested in augmented reality who aren't in special education, but are still finding ways of just using this in education. And lots of, since it's such a good example of universal design for learning, of multiple means of representation, or multiple means of action and multiple means of engagement, anyone really working with AR is a potential partner for our lab. And so this coming year, we've got some computer science students who will be here, interested in trying to create some new augmented reality applications. And then we're also going to have, so we'll try to be pushing that boundary, but we're also going to have lots of special education students who are testing things like Erasmo or some of the other augmented reality apps out there to try to help keep building that evidence base by building the science, saying, look, it works. So,
Chris, you're a teacher, and you also do a great deal of work guiding schools. Have you connected with this, and or what have you connected with it? Yes,
this is new to me also, Eustacia. So using augmented reality, I like it because we don't have the issues we have with virtual reality. And that was always the problem where the children, as Temple said, got lost in the video game and were not part of the reality. Now you're still in the classroom, you can see all your peers, you're working in a very real environment, having stuff put on top of it, and I do like it. I talked to a little 9-year-old yesterday, maybe she was 10, and she had autism, and she'd just gone to London with her mother, and she said, oh, it would have been nice if I'd had something where I could have just showed it in front of the building I was looking at, and it would have told me how they built that building and all about it. And I thought, wow, a child picks it up so fast, the uses of this technology. So I'm very anxious to use it, and also use it with some of the navigating of the community, which hopefully he's going to talk about a little bit more too. So yeah, I haven't used it. I'm ready.
And for the first part here, I'm going to show you just several that are out there and available on mobile devices right now. And then kind of at the end, we'll be looking at kind of what's coming next. We're going to look at the Microsoft HoloLens, which is a set of smart glasses, which is we've got early access to as developers. And we're going to start using, kind of pioneering how that's going to look and some applications for it for students with autism here in the next year. But I want to share with you one of my favorite videos of a student engaging with augmented reality.
Can you walk us through exactly
Yeah,
what's happening here?
What's happening here is this is a free app called String AR Showcase, and they were an advertising company that made this cute little monster. If you look at that little target there that's printed on the floor, that little monster pops up. So he doesn't know that those sight words are around there. But this is a student who hates working on sight words, engaged working on sight words for 45 minutes just by selecting and having Mr. Monster walk over to the word ball or walk over to the word blue. And from my time working with some fairly challenging students, 45 minutes on task is a pretty good day. So let's watch him work a little bit more. We've made the task a little bit more complicated now because he's going to walk from one word to another word. So we have to.
And he's just moving his iPad around.
Yeah, and he touches the screen, and our little alien three-eyed friend there just walks from one thing to another. So this is a good example of using something that maybe isn't necessarily designed to be educational, but finding some ways that we can adapt it as educators to make it useful for our students.
So the teacher decides what words and puts it on the floor, and then that's all the teacher has to do, and then hand them the iPad.
Correct.
Which sounds very simplistic, but you know what? For some of us looking at it, it's like, okay, I can do that. So
let's take a look at a couple of, I'm just going to pull up a couple of different AR apps that are here on my iPad, and then we'll look at a couple of things that are out there available for teachers right now. But if you look at this, here's a list of apps. I probably won't get to showing all of these today, but these are all mostly, well, I think they are all free apps that are out there. So, and let's see. Just 1 second. All right. Okay, let me try that one more time. Make my iPad go over to the computer there. All right, can you see my iPad, Chris?
Yes.
Hey, that's great news.
Yeah.
All right, it's exciting when the technology works for us. We all feel that way. So first one I'm going to show you is Erasmo. That's the one that I used for my dissertation. And this is the one that allows you to make up your own little cards. This is the, maybe we should start with something other than the large intestine. That's not really the most pleasant of all of our organs. I'm not sure thyroid beats it by much, but we'll.
The thyroid is a large gland that secretes hormones regulating growth and development.
All right, so here we've created vocabulary words that provide their own definitions, but if you were working with a young student with autism, you could also just match this up and make it a picture schedule. Here I've got the word nucleus, and it makes a picture of the nucleus pop up, but it could be, you could use a PEX card for a bathroom and then have your bathroom procedures, a little video of what the bathroom procedures are for that person pop up, or other parts of that person's day. So that's Erasmo, and it is really easy to use. You just kind of follow these on-screen instructions and make your own little app, and we can provide instructions for anybody who wants additional help with that. Some of the other ones that are out there and fun.
Chris, are there any people who are watching this with us who've got questions that they'd like to
I haven't seen any questions yet. I think everybody's just fascinated and watching it, and I think everybody's coming in at different levels, so we're all kind of learning as we go here. And that's why we're going to be doing 3 of these. We'll be doing this one, and then we're doing one in September and one in October, so people can join and have their questions next time if they missed them this time. But people need to know you can always email us with your questions at tgec@familiestogether.org. Just go to the website and you'll see the email. And we're now playing basketball.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Well, I thought I'd let you give out the email address before I started talking.
No, go ahead. I'm easily distracted. So.
Me too. This is another free augmented reality app out there. And this one's called AR Basketball. It could be easily used as a nice kind of carrot to help a student get through a difficult task. But also, I've seen some teachers use this in some pretty exciting ways in their classrooms. For example, for students that are working on higher level math. All right, students, today we're going to work on mean, median, and mode. So everybody take out your AR Basketball. We're all going to play for 5 minutes and we're going to write down our score. And then we're going to talk about mean, median, and mode and do a lesson on that. And then after about 20 minutes, we're going to come back. We're going to play AR Basketball for another 5 minutes, and then we're going to see if our percentage is improved. And that makes a pretty engaging math lesson. Now, I do not do nearly as well, both in real basketball and augmented reality basketball, compared to most of my students. So hopefully your students will do better than I generally do in this. So let's look at some other kind of engaging educational ones. There are lots of AR apps that are out there that are.
Is it possible for you to move your camera so we can actually see you operating? I don't know if you can do all that. The iPad. So yes. So now we can actually see you doing it on your iPad as well as seeing what's happening on the iPad. That's kind of fascinating.
Okay. All right. So you get to see a little bit of the mess I have here. So this is an app called AR Freedom Stories. And what it does, it's from the Harriet Tubman Museum in Canada. And these are all primary source materials that they're able to share with us because each little card matches up to a person's story. So let's listen to this one. I can turn it up a little bit. Yeah. All right, and I'll.
We're making it. How complicated can we make it?
Well, we'll get this down before the end of the lesson, maybe.
I couldn't trust understanding for my people any longer, so I brought them all here to Canada. It wasn't enough to get my people to freedom. They needed shelter, clothing, tools, and other things so they could get right to work. Where we lived in St. Catharines, North Street, was a bit like Maryland, with so many of my family and friends living there. The difference was.
All right, I'm going to stop that for a second. And so I guess I can return this back, and can you hopefully see me? But teachers are taking this and setting these around their classroom, and that allows their students to experience all 20 of these different stories from the Harriet Tubman Museum and engage with this pretty exciting content, which I think is a nice way that they're able to do some outreach, and they're able to see all of these amazing primary source materials that are available there. I do think that in a few years we'll be seeing augmented reality tools that will take incredibly hard, let's say 10th grade reading material or 9th grade physical science, when they have to, and just simplify it, or help read it aloud. Out there in the community, which
stop so that they can ask questions, because I find that with different places where I've lectured is if I'm trying to explain a point that's fairly complicated, if I don't stop and say, do you get it? If you don't get it, raise your hand. And that's essentially what you're saying is a complicated piece that's written for senior high schoolers. It's not, some of it a 3-year-old can get, but it has to be very reduced. And you have to be able to stop and say, do you get it?
Absolutely. Here's another one that I've come across recently. It's called, let's see if it'll load up here. Now we got a little lag here. Hold on one second. Making everything work right at the same time can be hard. All right. So this is called AI Poly. And I can use it to look at an object, like our computer right now in front of me, and it will.
Apple MacBook Pro.
I don't know if
MacBook Pro.
for me.
Apple MacBook Pro.
All right, good. That's enough talking. Thank you. it can get carried away, but I can look at an object and it will tell me what that object is and say it out loud. And when we think about helping our students, just like what you were talking about, things sometimes when we're teaching reading in isolation, it's hard for students to make those connections. Here with AI Poly, students could run around their classroom and hold up a Coke can or their house and learn, hey, that's a can of Coke, and see that spelling and hear that aloud. So that's great multiple means of representation, great means of
It also
action.
overcomes shame that a lot of children don't speak up because they're embarrassed and ashamed to say, I don't understand.
Absolutely.
So this transcends that, which is quite wonderful.
And what's fun about this app for me is, in a lot of ways, when I do my professional development for teachers, I tell them, we kind of have to learn to be education hackers. I'm not a hacker that goes in and does computer programming, but I can take something that's not necessarily designed for one thing and use it for another. This AI Poly is designed for people with vision impairments to help them, complete some pretty important real world tasks, like a can of Shasta soda tastes or looks exactly like or feels exactly like a can of Diet Coke. But if you want a can of Diet Coke and then you're trying to compare them and you have a vision impairment, you're going to be struggling. But with AI Poly, they'll go, that one is the Diet Coke, don't drink the Shasta. Sorry for all of our audience members who might be Shasta drinkers. I'm not my favorite. But I think that's one of the things that we can do as educators is we find ways to adapt, because the world isn't necessary, and these tools maybe aren't designed exactly for our students, but we can find a way to make that happen. I'm going to show you hopefully just one more before I give you a peek of the HoloLens. We only have an hour today, correct?
Yes, you have 15 minutes left.
Okay, so this one is called Yelp, and many people have used Yelp to, hold on one second, have used Yelp on their devices, hopefully, to search around them or rate restaurants. But here, I can use Yelp to find businesses that are nearby me and see how they are rated. Over behind Chris there's Cougar Country Drive-In apparently, and then all the food here in Pullman is apparently that direction, and there's a little bit more over there. So what's interesting about this, I know lots of adults without disabilities who struggle to use a two-dimensional map or even a Google map. So here they're able to see a really concrete representation. If I'm looking over at Chris and Cougar Country Drive-In is floating above Chris's head, I know that I need to go generally that direction. Obviously, this makes a lot more sense when I'm navigating outdoors versus here in this room. But
that would solve the problem of the GPS, because I grew up in the era where we used great big paper fold-out road maps, and they were pretty good. The only problem is you had to pull off the road, turn off the engine, get the map out, and study it before you could figure out how you were going to go. But a GPS doesn't always give you the surrounding situation. So if you get into a traffic jam on a GPS, it doesn't readily have a solution to that jam. And I thought, well, if we just had an old paper map, we could dodge off this road. And
yep. And with this, we've done several studies where students with autism are walking around, working on independent navigation in their community, and even for a lot of adults that I know who are using adults without disabilities who are using Google Maps, I'm the blue dot trying to get to the red dot isn't always straightforward for everybody who's using it.
No, it isn't.
And here, this is incredibly straightforward because I'm looking, and if I look over here, I get different information. Okay, the grocery store is this way. My mom's house is that way. Okay, that's where I'm trying to get to. So that's where, or the
It
my bus
locates
stop.
you.
Yeah. So we were able to do something just like the Yelp app did there in augmented reality to help students independently improve their navigation to employment opportunities. Was one of the most recent ones that we've done. So hopefully we're going to see a lot more interest here the next couple of years for some augmented reality research on mobile devices. There are dozens, if not several. I think last time I got a total count, there are about 200 augmented reality apps out there. If your audience just wants to go to, on their iPad, go to the App Store on the Android device, they can go to the Android Play Store and search for augmented reality. They're going to start seeing a whole list of these that are out there. Some of the ways that I've seen people use it that I think are pretty exciting. Here's an example of what people saw in our navigation studies. You can see that there. The other one that I've done is it's called Wikitude, and there are a couple of these, but they basically provide location-based information. So when I was at Pearl Harbor, I could look over at the big battleship, and it said, that is the USS Missouri. And then I could look over at the Arizona Memorial, and it would say, this is the Arizona Memorial. So if we can think about what that's going to look like in a couple of years, it can do this right now for big monuments. And so if you live in a place like New York City with tons of monuments and great locations, there's a lot more information. But augmented reality can basically act like an internet browser for information around you. I'm curious about this thing in front of me. What is it? And you can see that it's labeled the USS Missouri, and then you could tap on it and get more information. And there are apps, individual apps right now that'll do this for trees, and some that are going to do, I think I just saw my first one that'll do insects. You can get the insect to stay still enough to take a picture of it. It'll go, that is a beetle of some type. But the one for plants I've used pretty successfully. So it's kind of an exploding area right now. So that's kind of where it's happening right now with some of the mobile apps that are out there. And in our last few minutes, I want to show you kind of what's going to be coming next. We can have this right now on our mobile devices that we can carry around with us. In a few years, we're going to see a lot of smart glasses that'll be coming out onto the market. And we've got one right here, and you'll be able to see what I'm seeing behind me. Hopefully as they become more popular, their form factor will get a little bit smaller. I'm going to have a big set of glasses on my head here in a second. So I've got these little holographic objects that I can use here. So let's say I'm just going to grab Mr. Dinosaur. And I can grab him and put him in different places. I'm going to put him here on my messy desk.
You can see that.
All right, so I'm not sure if I'm in the way there, but
No,
now there
you're
is a
not.
dinosaur head in front of Chris.
It's a little blurry, but there you go. That's clear. I'm waving. I'm patting. I can almost pat it, but oops.
All right, so
Get really funny.
and
I'm
I
a
can
little
grab him and I can make him do different things. But I can also pull up letters, and so I could do things like spell out. Let's do a T for the Temple Grandin Foundation. We'll just place this right here. So I could, let's say, if I had a little bit more time, I'd spell out Temple so everyone could see it. I can pull up a menu here and interact with an internet browser. And so Now I've got a internet browser providing information right here on my wall. Temple Grandin. So I'm going to search for Temple Grandin on the internet. And can you see the web page there?
There it goes. Yes, yes. You have to stop moving, and then it
Yeah, sorry, I'll not
so
wait.
then we can see and so the web page is actually on the wall somewhere. Is that where you've pulled it up?
Mm-hmm. So I can place all sorts of information in different places around. One of the first things we're going to be looking at with this is matching up video models to tasks that are in front of the person that need to get completed. Take something simple like learning to use a dishwasher or complete an assembly task or a washing machine. A video model of how to use the washing machine could be sitting right above. Let's pretend that right over here there was a washing machine, and I look up and just press play, and the instructions for the washing machine or the assembly task for a new job are just sitting right there.
Now, get in front of the camera so we can see those glasses, because my recommendation is they get smaller and cuter before I'm going to wear them. So we got to work on that.
I also want them to get smaller and, you know, not be quite this large. But for an early prototype, this is a pretty impressive device. This is a Microsoft HoloLens, and I think, you know, this is a full Windows 10 computer that sits right on top of, I can see different things right in front of my eyes. I could pull up Microsoft Word. I could have Netflix going for a soothing scene there, or let's say if I wanted to experience something that, let's say I was allowed to stim for a little bit of time, and I really enjoyed ceiling fans. And I could have a video of a ceiling fan, and I could hear it in the speakers that are right at my ears without everyone in the classroom possibly experiencing the ceiling fan or other preferred reinforcer, which ceiling fans are not that soothing for me, so I'd be happy to not have them.
Well, no, I think it's fascinating, and this is the technology we're going to bring some kids up and have them try it and see how long it takes them to be able to use it. And I'm sure I'm laughing about getting them smaller, but the way things go, it won't take long before they're much smaller and easier to use.
No, from what I'm reading, they're licensing this technology to other manufacturers, and it'll hopefully become a little bit lighter and a little less conspicuous than this. But it's powerful to see how much it's able to do just right now, still as a pretty early device. You know, think about our potential to create a literacy-rich environment with it and just label all of the objects in our classroom, just like we do for the door, or and we write the word door on a door. There's no reason why using this it couldn't actually recognize that is a door, and or that is a Great Dane, and you can tap on it and stick your finger out and go like this, and you'll get more information about that breed of dog, or that horse, or that monument in my city. So that's where I think we're going to see a lot of this technology moving towards.
And we are past time, which we could
so
obviously go on forever. Eustacia, do you want to take us away with this?
Most of all, I want to thank you so much for giving us a glorious day, Don.
Well, I'm glad to do it.
And look forward to your being with us again.
Yeah, I think that maybe
Pick up from where we left off.
Yeah, we saw a lot of really high-tech things this time, but what's kind of most exciting is some of the built-in accessibility features that are in mobile devices and ways that you can make you know, an iPad read a web page aloud for a struggling reader. So there's a lot of high tech, but there's a lot of simple stuff too out there.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to next month.
Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Who's that having a grand conversation? Who's that having a grand conversation? Who's that having a grand conversation when there's nobody there at all? Who's that laughing right out loud, happy as can be? Who's that laughing right out loud? Who's that laughing at me? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Who's that having a grand conversation? Who's that having a grand conversation? Who's that having a grand conversation when there's nobody there at all? Who's that laughing right out loud, happy as can be? Who's that laughing right out loud? Who's that laughing at me? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Who's that laughing right out loud, happy as can be? Who's that laughing right out loud? Who's that laughing at me? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Hey there, little sunbeam chaser, happy as can be. Hey there, little sunbeam chaser, you come back to me. Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam down the hall? Who's that chasing a sunbeam? Who's that chasing a sunbeam?